before you scroll, before you doubt, before you tell yourself this is just another message floating across your screen, pause, because this is not random. And deep down you already feel that. Something inside you tightened when you read those words, chosen one. The test is ending. The reward is starting. Your spirit reacted before your mind could analyze it. That wasn't coincidence. You were guided here. You were nudged here. And the reason is simple. You have been in a season that almost broke you, but it did not. The test is ending. The reward is starting. You have been wondering how much longer. How many more delays? How many more nights where you stared at the ceiling asking questions that seemed to echo back in silence? You kept showing up. You kept believing even when belief felt thin. You kept praying even when heaven felt quiet. And sometimes you didn't even pray with words. You just sighed. And somehow that sigh carried more faith than 1,000 perfect sentences. You thought you were barely holding on, but the truth is, you were being strengthened. You felt isolated, not because you wanted to disconnect, but because the people around you couldn't understand what you were carrying. You tried to explain it. You tried to shrink it. You tried to laugh it off. But inside, you knew something bigger was unfolding. Something that didn't fit into ordinary conversations. Something that didn't make sense to those who were comfortable staying where they were. And you started to realize you were being separated for a reason. You thought the separation was punishment. It wasn't. It was positioning. You thought the delay was denial. It wasn't. It was divine timing. You thought the silence meant abandonment. It didn't. It meant preparation. There were moments you questioned your own strength. Moments you replayed old mistakes in your mind like a loop that wouldn't stop. You wondered if you somehow disqualified yourself. If maybe the dream was too big. If maybe you misheard the calling. But here is the truth that you are only now beginning to see. The very battles you survived were evidence that you are marked for elevation. You have been in spiritual warfare. Not dramatic movie scene warfare. Quiet warfare. Internal warfare. The kind where your confidence is tested. Where your patience is stretched. Where your character is refined in ways nobody applauds. And you endured it. You endured nights of doubt. You endured days of being misunderstood. You endured seasons of watching others move ahead while you stood still. You stood still, but you were not stagnant. You were being rooted. There is a difference. You wondered why certain people walked away. Why some doors closed so suddenly. Why plans collapsed just when you thought they were finally working. You blamed yourself. You blamed timing. You even blamed luck. And heaven gently watched you thinking, if only you could see what I am protecting you from. You thought it was bad luck, but heaven was probably saying, relax, I'm working. And yes, if heaven had a sense of humor, and it does, you might even imagine it smiling at your impatience, not in mockery, but in affection, because you are loved. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. And the test you've been in was never meant to destroy you. It was designed to reveal you. There is something you don't fully understand yet. There were times when you felt like you were losing time, losing opportunities, losing people. But what was actually happening was alignment. You were being detached from environments that could not sustain your next level. You were being shielded from connections that would have diluted your purpose. You were being slowed down so that when acceleration came, you would not crash under the weight of it. You were being built in private. That's why it hurt quietly. That's why nobody saw the full extent of your struggle. They saw you smiling. They saw you functioning. They saw you surviving. But they did not see the internal negotiations you had with yourself just to keep going. They did not hear the conversations you had with destiny in the dark. They did not feel the heaviness you carried while pretending everything was fine. But you were seen. Every silent tear was recorded. Every moment you chose integrity over impulse was noted. Every time you resisted giving up when it would have been easier to quit, it strengthened something in you that cannot be taken away. And here is the shift. You didn't expect the pain you thought was breaking you was actually upgrading you. The rejection you thought was proof of inadequacy was actually evidence of distinction. You were not fitting in because you were not designed to blend in. You were not being celebrated yet because you were still being crafted. You were in training, and training rarely feels glamorous. You asked for elevation, but elevation requires endurance. You asked for impact, but impact requires resilience. You asked to be used for something greater, and greater requires growth. The loneliness, it was teaching you self-trust. The delay, it was teaching you patience. The rejection, it was teaching you identity. You are not who you were when this test began. You are deeper now, wiser, less reactive, more discerning. You don't chase what doesn't align anymore. You don't beg for validation like you once did. You learn to sit with yourself, to confront your fears, to examine your wounds instead of hiding them. And somewhere along the way, you stop needing constant applause. That was the turning point. You thought the breakthrough would look like noise, like sudden fireworks and dramatic change, but the real breakthrough started internally when you realized you didn't need external confirmation to know who you are. That quiet confidence, that's new. That calm strength, that's earned. You survived things that were meant to intimidate you. You overcame obstacles that were meant to distract you. You stayed standing when lesser storms would have knocked others down. And yet, you still doubted yourself. Isn't that ironic? You, who endured so much, still questioning whether you are capable. Let this settle into your spirit. If you were not chosen, you would not have been tested at this level. Ordinary assignments do not require extraordinary pressure. The weight you felt was proportional to the calling on your life. The test is ending, not because you complained, not because you demanded it, but because you passed. You passed in ways you don't even recognize yet. You passed when you forgave someone who never apologized. You passed when you kept your character intact under pressure. You passed when you refused to compromise your values just to speed up the process. You passed when you kept showing up for your responsibilities, even while carrying invisible battles. You passed when nobody was clapping. And now, something is shifting. You feel it, don't you? A subtle lift, a slight clarity, a new perspective on things that once felt overwhelming. The same situations that used to trigger anxiety now feel manageable. The same opinions that used to hurt now bounce off. That is not numbness. That is growth. The reward is starting. But here's the part that surprises you. The reward is not just external success. It's internal alignment. It's peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. It's confidence that doesn't require validation. It's discernment that protects your energy. And yes, there will be visible blessings too. Doors will open that once felt sealed. Opportunities will appear that align perfectly with who you've become. Connections will feel natural instead of forced. But you will approach them differently now. You won't cling. You won't beg. You won't panic. You will recognize them. Because you are no longer desperate. You are prepared. Think back to the version of you at the beginning of this season. That version would have mishandled what is coming. Not out of weakness, but out of immaturity. You needed this refinement. You needed this stretching. You needed this isolation. It was uncomfortable, yes. It was confusing, absolutely. There were moments you wanted to fast, Forward through it like a bad movie scene. If only life had a skip intro button, right? But every scene mattered. Every lesson counted. Every delay was strategic. There were times you compared yourself to others. You watched their progress, their milestones, their public wins, and you wondered if you were behind. But you were never behind. You were on a different path. A path that required deeper roots before visible fruit. You were being built for sustainability, not speed. That's why shortcuts were removed from your life. That's why certain temptations didn't stick. That's why some options that looked good on the surface quietly dissolved. You thought you missed out. In reality, you were preserved for purpose. And now, as the test concludes, you will notice something else. Your intuition is sharper. Your boundaries are stronger. Your voice carries more authority. Not because you are louder, but because you are clearer. You know who you are now. You know what you bring to the table. And you are no longer afraid to walk away from what doesn't respect that. The reward is starting in your mindset. The reward is starting in your relationships. The reward is starting in your opportunities. The reward is starting in your peace. And here is the hidden truth. You've been circling around this entire time. The biggest reward is becoming the version of yourself you once prayed to be. The confident one, the grounded one, the resilient one, the one who doesn't crumble under pressure, the one who trusts divine timing instead of forcing outcomes. You are stepping into that version now. The test didn't end because circumstances suddenly became easy. It ended because you became stronger than the circumstances. The storm didn't disappear. You learned how to stand in it. That is power. And now, doors that were once locked are responding differently to you. Conversations are shifting. Energy is changing. People who once overlooked you are beginning to notice something different. Not because you are trying harder, but because you are aligned. Alignment is magnetic. You are no longer chasing what is meant for you. You are attracting it. And here is where the final shift takes place. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And you start declaring, this is happening for me. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of delay and start recognizing yourself as a student of destiny. You stop shrinking your vision to fit your current reality and start expanding your faith to match your calling. You were chosen for a reason. Not to struggle endlessly. Not to prove yourself to everyone. But to grow through fire and emerge refined. The test is ending because the lesson has been integrated. The reward is starting because you are ready to handle it. And as you move forward, remember this. When doubt tries to whisper again, remind yourself of everything you survived. When fear tries to resurface, remind yourself of every battle you already won. When impatience tries to rush you, smile gently and say, I've seen what happens when I trust the process. You are not late. You are not lost. You are not overlooked. You are aligned. And this message, it found you because you needed confirmation, not information. Your spirit already knew. Your intuition already sensed it. This is your confirmation that the heavy season is lifting. That the invisible training is complete. That the next chapter is not about endurance, but expansion. Stand taller now. Speak clearer now. Move bolder now. Because the test is ending and the reward is starting. If this message resonates, if you feel in your spirit that this was meant specifically for you, comment, my test is over. Declare it. Own it. Activate it. And stay connected because the next message will meet you exactly where your breakthrough begins.